Welcome to the CEIBS China Knowledge Podcast, produced by the China Europe International Business School.
In the next session, we will focus on the discussing China-UK investment approaches to win-win cooperation. The first part of this session is about Greenfield Investment and cooperation in the third-party market, creating value for win-win outcomes. Let us now welcome the moderator of the session, Mr. Zhou Xin, Editor-in-Chief of Yicai Global, and the four panelists. And the panelists are Ms. Rita Liu, Head of Europe, Mid East and Africa, Alipay, Mr. Henry Sun, Chairman, NVC Lighting UK, Mr. Han Ruixiang, CEO, Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, London, and then Mr. Philip Lee, CFO, the London Taxi Company. Could all the panelists join us on the stage, please? Welcome. Thank you. Yeah, that's yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think this topic is very interesting, but it's also very difficult because today we're talking about the Greenfield investment, not Brownfield investment. So that's different. So let me give you this concept as first. I know here is the professor, and if something's wrong from me, you can correct me immediately. So at the very beginning, I'm willing to give you an introduction about my panelists, distinguished panelists here. So first is Rita Liu. Rita Liu is from Alipay, and she is very young, but she is in charge of Alipay's business in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So it's huge. And I think most of the people here, maybe you heard about the story about Alipay. Alipay in China has 450 million users, and almost 200 million people use it every day. That's a number from your official website. I hope it's right. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So my second panelist is Henry Sun. Henry Sun is the chairman of NVC Lighting, London. So NVC is a pioneer of a Chinese company who investing in UK. And the marvelous experience from Mr. Sun is he worked here, living and working in London for over 25 years. So you are British.
Myself, not the NVC. NVC only 10 years.
Ah, right.
Sorry. Yeah.
So experience is more than NVC. Thank you. And another distinguished guest is from ICBC. ICBC is the largest commercial bank in China. And Mr. Han Ruixiang's experience is marvelous. His marvelous experience, working experience, is including Hong Kong, Australia, Korea. He received the award of excellent service and the contribution to Korea economy. So thank you, Mr. Han. And my English Chinese entrepreneur is Mr. Philip Lee.
With the Chinese name.
Yes, with Chinese surname. He is the CFO of London Taxi, and I know you have great connections with the Chinese company, Geely. So, okay, now I will give you each of my panelists 5 minutes for introducing your achievements and your business. You are the lady first.
Okay, thank you. I'm Rita. I'm actually based here. I'm managing Alipay's business in EMEA region. So as Mr. Zhou mentioned, that Alipay is very well known in China. We actually started in 2004 supporting Alibaba's online marketplaces. Back then, it was basically the start of e-commerce industry in China, and no one knew how to make online payments. So Alipay was created to provide escrow service for online sellers and buyers. And because what happened later, everyone knows the booming e-commerce market and also later on the booming mobile penetration in China, we now grew into something what we call a lifestyle super app, bundling payment services, wealth management, financial services, lifestyle services into one app, and it's used by 450 million users. So what are we doing here in Europe? We started here almost 2 years ago. So we thought, the first step to take is to service our users from China. Why? Because with the rising middle class in China, there are more and more people traveling to Europe and shop here. And with the massive revolution to cashless experience in China, we want to provide our users the same experience they have in China while they travel outside of China. And as you know, the business opportunity itself is also massive because there were 120 million Chinese tourists arrival in the world in 2014, and this number will rise to 230 million in 2020, and this is a huge opportunity. We want to help the merchants here to better engage with Chinese consumers and help them, get more business from Chinese. So that's what we are focusing on now in this region, and we have done quite well. In the past year, we have announced many important deals with merchant, some well-known banks, as our merchant acquirers, and also some technical enablers, including Genico, Verifone. And on the merchant side, we also, have launched with many well-known brands, including Harrods here, Selfridges in London, and World Duty Free recently, and Printemps in Paris. So so it's an exciting journey. We're just starting here in Europe, and hopefully we will, get more achievement here in this market. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not lucky as you do. I'm working for NVC Lighting. NVC Lighting in China is the largest lighting company and stock listed in Hong Kong. And NVC UK started in 2007, and after 10 years, neither the company nor myself are dead. We are still alive, and actually we achieved quite a lot. We have employed over 100 people on payroll, and our turnover reached 30 to 33 million pounds. We are the top 10 lighting supply in the major lighting industry in UK. So I think every day I'm thinking is how to survive and how to grow. So therefore I'm very, very keen. The last professor, he mentioned that how to survive. Yeah, so that really is what I say.
Thank you. Mr. Han.
Thank you, Mr. Zhou. I'm very pleased to be part of the forum today. And you are right in saying that ICBC is now the China's largest commercial bank, but I think I should say it's no exaggeration to say that we are the largest bank in the universe, because of the top 1,000 banks by terms of asset, ICBC is now the world's largest bank. But that doesn't say that we are already the world's best bank. There's something we have been aspiring to do, to become. While I was coming, I've been feeling very hot today. I think the weather is very hot. I was trying to figure out why the weather is so hot today, because there's such a big turnout, It means the enthusiasm about investment into UK from China, and the UK enthusiasm about China is very high. So that brought up the temperature. So as the local CEO of ICBC London, and also the general manager of ICBC branch, because I ran the subsidiary and the branch. It means I'm responsible for the commercial banking side of ICBC. And in addition to, we started the PLC ICBC London back in 2003, and has been growing very steadily over the years. until in 2014 we started the branch. We was granted the branch license from PRA, and so we've been running the branch and the license for the past 2 years. Now we have experienced sort of exorbitant growth due to the commitment of ICBC to the UK market, and also, as we know, UK being the largest offshore financial center of the world. So naturally, and despite the fact that there's most probably going to be a Brexit, UK might leave the EU someday or in 2 years' time, and also there is naturally some uncertainties of the market. But ICBC, as the world's largest bank, we remain committed to this market. And in addition to our commercial operations, our Greenfield investment, that is, we also have, back in 2005, we acquired the controlling stake in Standard Bank PLC. So we are running also, we have a huge brownfield investment also. So putting all together, for ICBC alone, we have over 1,000 staff working in London. And when I was listening to Professor Yang's lecture on the primary drivers for the Chinese outbound investment, he was commenting on the fact that the Chinese investors' investment, it seems that do not conform to the Western theories of outbound investment. But as a bank, the bank's investment, as I say, as far as I can see, our model conforms more or less, more strictly to the Western model. Because as far as I see, two of the most important decisive factors stand out for ICBC's investment outside China. Because firstly, we are following our customers. There are existing customers, and also there are potential customers. So secondly, we also seek graphical diversification for the revenue. So being the world's largest bank and being both listed in Hong Kong and Shanghai, we have a geographically diversified investor profile. So our investors, diversified investors, want to see a fully diversified revenue of the bank. So that's why we have been investing outside China. In addition to that, as a bank, I think we have to play an important role to play on the financing side, because as we follow our customers, as we develop our local customers, we provide financing services to these prospective investors and help to ensure that their investments will be a success in the local market. So in addition to provide funding support, we're also providing other ancillary services like advisory, for example, because when entering a new market, you have many factors to consider. For example, a proper due diligence has to be conducted. I think in some extreme cases, some of the Chinese investors, they didn't have done sufficient homework before they decide to invest into UK or Europe. So, but the banks, as a financing support financer, as a provider of loan, we could also provide other related services if the customers might need in understanding the market. So to sum up, a bank, like all other banks, now we have 7 Chinese banks here, and I believe more will be coming, and that will be providing a convincing proof to the UK regulator and also to the UK government that we have commitment, we have expectations of the UK market even after the Brexit. So the banks will play primarily an intermediary role and be acting as a bridge in servicing the bilateral investment. So
So do you understand?
Yeah, thank you.
It's okay.
It's good, very interesting. Yeah, thank you. So thank you for inviting me here today. I think the first thing I need to do is apologise for that photograph. It makes me look fatter, and can you lend me a photograph if you don't mind, please? Very grateful. So I'm the CFO for the London taxi company. Okay, so we have built, in fact, a new plant to build the electric version of the new iconic London taxi, but also we're pushing a lot more into commercial vehicles. So we've invested 325 million. We are owned by Geely, the company that also owns Volvo, and the London Taxi Company, and now just recently announced Lotus and Proton. So outwardly investing. I am very closely in contact daily with the Chinese parent, so have a lot of contact with Chinese. The investment itself is interesting because I see, in fact, from the talks today and the lectures today, I think we're a pancake. I think we're a pancake. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, yes, we are a pancake, and we're going to become a cake. So that's part of my job. So we can talk about the investment and cash for that later. The interesting thing about how the model works is that the plant is built. We are already producing vehicles in the new plant, and it's been incredibly complex, a complex journey. We've built a new plant in 2 years. We have a new product which is being developed completely from scratch in 2 years. A completely new supply base, in fact. There's not a single supplier or component from the old taxi that you'll probably or may get home tonight. There's not a single component from that taxi on the new one. So a completely new supply base. And dealing with automotive OEMs and automotive tier ones is a difficult job. Because you have to convince them of your business plan. And also completely new business systems. We talked about interconnectivity on the global platform. We have to be able to, in order to be competitive, we have to have that infrastructure in place. And interestingly, a completely new culture as well of the organisation. Just to give you some realisation of the task that we've had to go through. When I started in 2013, and I wasn't there for the acquisition, but I was brought in because of the acquisition, we had just under 100 employees, and as we sit here now, there's 740. So a complete change in culture, along with integration of all those people, has been quite a challenge. Why Geely and what have they embarked upon? Well, I think the company is incredibly visionary. They take companies, brands, the LTC brand, the London Taxi brand, is probably got an old, staid reputation, not had much investment over the last 10 or 15 years, and they've taken that vision and they've taken that idea, coupled it with the facts that we have a desire in the urban environment for cleaner air, and taking that concept and putting that along with the strategy of Geely of having low emissions, zero emissions commercial vehicles in the cities, is taking that model to a step further, because there is also a vision that people don't want to own cars in the city, and they don't want to drive around in a vehicle that's been adapted from a passenger car. They need a purpose-built vehicle. And we're seeing a lot of interest in the product globally, a lot in Europe, and not just in London. So the vision is that we will take that and become a cake, and then my life will be complete.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think the first part of this panel is a promotion, is company promotion.
Oh, yeah.
So I think the following question will be not so easy for every gentleman and lady. So today our topic is about the Greenfield Investment. I think this is very interesting because Greenfield Investment is more complicated than other options. It's a complicated legal and culture procedure. And because I'm a journalist, I want to give you two news. The one is bad news, and another one is good news. The bad news is from UK. I read a report from FT, Financial Times. They just report such a news. They said in the first quarter of this year, in terms of Greenfield investment in UK, is plunges 42%. And when I asked them why the issue happened, because of the BRICS, the government and the country become more and more unpredictable. That's the reason. The good news is from China, that from last year, first quarter of last year, China became the #1 Greenfield investor globally. So I want to ask you, my dear panelists, do you think BRICS will influence Chinese entrepreneurs' confidence for investing in this country? Harry.
Okay.
25 years experience.
Okay. I think for NVC Lighting, I don't think we're affected our business, because the reason is very simple. If we export to the mainland European countries, we can deliver the goods direct from China. We do not need a bypass from UK. Whilst the UK team still can to do some research and developing and quality control and promotion, all that. But for the trading, can still direct from China to there. So therefore, it's not affected that. However, it immediately painful for us, which actually is the sterling falling. That is the biggest problem for us, because 90% of our purchase are US dollar, and 90% of the sales income is sterling. So we are suffered a lot, and this is very bad for us.
Right, and Mr. Han, you are a banker. You are a banker, and you mentioned to me before you're very positive for BRICS, for Chinese entrepreneurs. Tell me why.
Yeah, thank you. It would be politically incorrect to say no, because everybody agree that the Brexit will affect us to a certain extent, to a varying degrees. But as I speak for particularly Chinese financial sector, the Chinese banks, as I said, we have now the presence of 7 banks, and more banks are coming. And basically, we have been following our pioneer, the Bank of China model. It means in setting up operations, we have already partitioned our UK operations away from our operations in EU. For example, in the case of ICBC, we have a headquarters for our operations in Luxembourg. It's called ICBC Europe, headquartered in Luxembourg, passporting to other EU member countries. And our UK operations are basically supposed to cover, first, most importantly, UK market, island market, and also, as we know, UK is the world's largest offshore financial center, and most of the foreign banks here use UK as the EMI center, covering Middle East, European countries, and African countries. We know, as far as I can see, UK is traditionally a well-established financial center. It was a financial center before UK became a member of the EU. So after UK decided not to become a member of the EU, it will continue to play its role as a financial center. A financial center is a center of reputation for liquidity. It attracts all the money here. So that's why all the our upper stream mining companies in the Middle East, in South African countries, in African countries, they come to EU to raise the funding. So I think personally, or for the Chinese banks, I think it will not. It will marginally affect us.
Okay, so BRICS is a good thing for Chinese entrepreneurs and Chinese companies. It's very positive for us. But this morning I read news from Wall Street Journal. It's very interesting. The news is from German Chancellor Merkel. She said, we means China and Germany. We don't only change goods, but we are also cooperating more and more in tech areas. And also for Chinese Greenfield investors. So Philip, I know you worked in France and other mainland European countries. What's your opinion? Can you compare the two countries, UK and Germany? What's the difference? Why they are number one?
I can't compare Germany. I've never worked there. I've worked in France. It's easier for me to answer the question relating to my own experience. I personally believe that in every type of situation, you look for the opportunities as in all situations. And the way that we have approached the situation was we planned for both eventualities. We hoped for the better. We ended up with a Brexit, and from our perspective, we looked at that and saw what opportunities that could do. So, firstly, in terms of investment and investment in Greenfield, well, our investment was already made. However, since then, Geely have made further investments. Since Brexit, they've recently announced the acquisition of Lotus and Proton. So there is definitely an investment coming there. So I don't see Chinese investment diminishing from that perspective. And from my perspective, you always match the funding. So therefore, you hedge the risk and understand the risks associated with that. And apart from shying away from the issue, you just match the funding in order to be able to control what you see as the problems. Secondly, we also face the same problem in terms of importation. It's well known that especially within automotive, you have to be able to deal with tier one suppliers, and a lot of them are on a global platform. So they do have UK supply bases, and we try to, wherever possible, deal in sterling, but we inevitably have funding risk surrounding the euro and also other currencies, namely the dollar. We don't have a big battery manufacturing plant in the UK. That's fact. And if electric vehicles are going to be the future, we need to start making some further investments in relation to that as volumes and popularity of these type of vehicles grow. But, as I say, the opportunities are to export more. We are cheaper for our products in order to do that. And we have the privilege, maybe not with yourselves, but we do have the privilege of being able to look to the European and global markets in order to export on a global platform what we believe to be a desirable product. So there is definitely an opportunity within the UK, and we are well supported in terms of industry and the government. We certainly see access to funding routes, and myself have raised over 30 million in terms of grant funding for investment in the site and the product, in terms of innovation within powertrains and also in terms of internalising the UK supply base. That's well known, and some of the largest grants ever awarded, in fact, to a UK company for that nature of work. So I definitely believe that there is a desire to invest still in the UK, because what's changed? We're still good at what we do in the UK. We're still innovators. We still heavily invest in R&D. I still think there is a prospect in the UK, and I still believe that there is a very optimistic view going forward.
Thank you. I know that Alipay is accepted at 12 European airports. It's marvelous. It's accepted in UK, in Heathrow Airport.
Yeah.
It's already. Do you have any plan for target European local customers?
I get that. Thank you. I get that question every day because, in a way,
from UK, from here.
Yeah,
the gentleman very popular.
Yeah. So I get this question every day because I think China in a way is in the area of fintech is going through a leap in terms of customer experience and the things we do the abundance of it. I think so when we showcase what Alipay it really is to this market, people were like, wow, that's so cool and so convenient. Right. So I get that question a lot, but I always say it's in our probably down the road. but we don't have a timeline yet because, to be frank, Europe is a very complicated market when it comes to, offering a customer-facing, what we do in China, a customer-facing app to the customers here, because every country is so different culturally and business-wise. The customers' pain points are also very different. What they need, what they require is very different. So it's a very tough question for us to answer. Which market should we start with? I think but I do think from our experience we have in China, I think there are spaces we can create value here in Europe, but it's a question of where and when.
Yeah. So, Philip, I have a question to you. So your company, the London Taxi, can accept Alipay immediately.
We can talk about this. We can talk about this afterwards. It's definitely innovation to be sought.
So I think our topic goes to regulation. Last decades, at least I interviewed the two prime ministers from UK, Tony Blair and Cameron, and asked them the same question: do you welcome Chinese entrepreneurs, Chinese companies? They said, of course, yes, very positive. But personally, I feel maybe change something, but maybe something did not change them. So today, I know Brexit happened. So maybe someday UK will separate from the European mainland. So for Chinese companies, Chinese entrepreneurs, it is easier to talk about the UK government separate from the EU treaties or EU laws. Am I right? So, Mr. Han?
UK is still part of EU as of today, and all the all the EU laws is still applicable, at least as far as banking is concerned. We have to keep on to comply with UK laws and at the same time comply with EU laws. So that creates all the complexity. So I was a little bit relieved when we learned of the Brexit. The UK decided to leave Brexit because as bankers, we have to deal with one set of law that will be sufficient. But I think because whether Brexit will finally occur or not, we don't know, because it's 2 or more years down the track, and there will be other certainties we really don't know. But I hope that because whether UK is going to remain within or is going ultimately to leave the EU, we should try to make, at least as a foreign investor, make the laws simpler and more straightforward for us. That would be better, more desirable.
Yeah, and an opportunity there as well to do this. Yeah.
Yes, okay. I know the legal system in UK are very complicated because my major is law and study in City University of London for 2 years about law classes. Really? So the microphone is really. So last month, a very significant case happened in UK. I think a high court in UK court just want to ban China's largest smartphone maker Huawei sell their products in UK. I think because some illegal thing happened. So as Chinese entrepreneurs, you are all from Chinese leading companies. How to avoid law problem, legal problem here? I think it's a crucial problem. And Rita, I think you are very aggressive in Europe. And do you think about that, consider about that, the legal problems?
Definitely. I think, for any company, it's the same. Coming into a new market, we need to take cautious steps. So everything we do, especially, our industry, right, fintech is a heavily regulated industry. So everything we do we do a very complete legal research first. Then we take actions. But I think another thing is partnership for us is key everywhere in the world. In this market, the same. So our approach is we work through the local players. So that helps as well because they understand the local market, they understand the local regulation deeper and better than us. And we develop our merchants through our partnerships, the local licensed players. So that also helps, I think.
So how about the NVC?
Yeah, I think there's a huge of difference between China and the UK, the law regulations. And I should say that when you're talking legal or illegal, you never win. And to run NVC in UK for last 10 years, I faced quite a few legal challenges or that. Fortunately, most of I win. But I'm thinking that when you face the legal challenge, it is not you are right or wrong, you are legal or not illegal. You also need thinking about commercial. Sometimes you are right, but for commercially, and it will be better you set it out because you can saving money. And that is completely different from what the Chinese mentality. And I think for myself, first I always keep use very high level of professional take their advice. And secondly, as an individual, the person run the company, and as the company, ourselves need to do right thing. You never play game or dodgy, play with either staff or regulation. I think that is very, very important. And because China is still a developing country, and a lot of law regulations are not perfect yet, and therefore left a lot of gray area. And I am talking with some Chinese business people all the time. They always said that, maybe we can dodge that because in UK this is the not clearly or whatever. And my advice to those people always that if you want to run business in UK, you need to respect that, and you never play that. And it seems you may game from a play game, but actually, or eventually, you will losses and you will have trouble.
Right. But I also have a question because from the book, even from the book from CEIBS, the book, when they mention the Greenfield Investment, the most important part is legal protection from the host country. So I want to ask Mr. Han, your bank, do you feel some legal protection from the host country, from UK?
I don't feel that way because as a bank, banking is obviously the most heavily regulated industry. In UK, we have a very strict regulator, the PRA and the FCA. And for the banks, the legal cost is basically compliance costs because we have to build up very big compliance teams, local, to ensure that the bank operates, stays always in a compliance status. And we're not complying with the UK laws or complying with the EU laws. We must also comply with the requirements of the head office, with CBRC, the Yinjianhui's laws, the People's Bank of China's regulations, for example. So as a foreign bank here, we feel all the pressure coming from various sides, from the local market, from our home market, and that creates, consequently leads to a build-up of ever-expanding local teams engaged the compliance work.
Right. And Phil, you are the only English gentleman here and on the stage. And please tell me, do we need to do something for Chinese entrepreneurs, Chinese companies? Maybe give some suggestion to the UK government. Can they do something for helping Chinese companies?
Yes, yeah, I do believe so. I'm just casting my mind back to when we made the investment and when the investment came along, and we have built a plant, and I think that, number one, the question is partly related to the size of investment. So, for example, if you're building a greenfield plant, if you're putting a large amount of investment in there, it seems to be fairly logical that you want to own that land, you want to own that building because it mitigates your risk. And therefore, if you're putting a large amount of kit in there, especially highly specialist kit and equipment in there, owning that investment mitigates your risk, because certainly being a leasing land or leasing premises has its pitfalls, and that can be a difficult area in terms of legislation, law, and also in terms of investment. But for smaller scale investment, I think that's a highly logical approach, because it can reduce risk and give you time to plan and time to understand. Now, from our perspective, my biggest problem associated with the investment was weaving through the legal loopholes surrounding how to support investment from the UK government. The legislation and the minefield out there of how to support investment from a UK government perspective, I found incredibly difficult. RGF grants, APC grants, funding even for things like local apprenticeship schemes and things like this. All these type of investments was partly were a mixture of my own understanding of the system, partly from me going out there and finding expertise, but also a heavy dose of learning along the way, and I think that weaving through the bureaucracy loops and legislation loops that go through that to support investment is very, very important, and I think we can do more to support that. That would therefore alleviate concerns about investment.
Yes, I think this is very important. And in 2015, when ex-Prime Minister Cameron and Chancellor Osborne, they visited Shanghai at a huge conference. They faced Chinese entrepreneurs, Chinese officials. They gave lots of commitment to Chinese companies to welcome Chinese company for investing in UK. It is true, but UK government as a democracy government, you have vote, you have referendum. They made the market, I think, a little unpredictable things. So I think it's the problem. This is one thing. The another thing, as you mentioned, is a bureaucratic system is also here. I still remember I watched the BBC soap opera Yes Minister decades ago. When Sir Humphrey said Yes Minister, that means no minister. So Rita, when you negotiate with a UK government or your partner negotiate with the UK government, do you feel the same thing? Maybe today is a Cameron government, another day is another.
So I think in the area of fintech, UK is, on the regulatory level, is actually very, I think, progressive. UK is actively promoting, fintech industry, and also builds the environment for fintech players to innovate. FCA even has this arrangement of sandbox for startups to test something out. If you have an idea, you can have the sandbox environment to test the idea out. With their approval, but without getting a full license. So I think in our area, I find actually UK regulator very, very progressive and very supportive of the business.
From FCA. I remember FCA in just half year has removed the two heads. They changed the two heads in just half year.
Okay.
Right. And the financial system in UK is highly regulated. I want to ask Mr. Han, in this system, and in one side is high regulated, and another side maybe is a bureaucratic system. I think your customer and maybe you need to negotiate with two sides. It's difficult or not so difficult?
I think this question is basically a Chinese way of thinking, because I can only say that my experience that UK is where the rule of law started, as versus the rule by law. So UK, yes, I believe, as you mentioned, I have also been watching the TV series, Yes Minister, and also have now progressed to watching Yes Prime Minister. And I think, the rule of law, I just recently had a new realization. It's not exactly a rule of the law. The rule of what rule of law really means is the rule to lead by consent. It means those who are being led must consent or must acquiesce to your leading or to your rule. That's basically. So I think in the UK, as long as we can obtain a correct understanding of what the regulations are, and we should abide by them, we should not touch them, for example. Of course, in UK, we are practicing what we call the principle-based supervision. By principle-based, it means sometimes it's very difficult to judge where the criteria are. But basically, you have to set yourselves very high criteria, usually higher than what the regulator might set up. So we have to stay well above the threshold. So I think as long as we can ensure that we conform to the laws, we have the right interpretations of the laws, I do not think that in the everyday business we have too much to deal with bureaucracy issues.
Thank you. Actually, my Chinese thinking is from Chinese entrepreneurs. It's not only from mine. Okay, can we talk about something about culture? Maybe easier. And today, Heathrow Airport and Black Cabs and Harvey Nichols and other English companies are all part owned by Chinese companies. So I know, Henry, your company, you hired 90% of your workers, your employees is from local. So do you feel some problems or difficulties mixed two culture, Chinese culture, especially the management maybe is from China and the employee is from local? Any difficulties?
Yes, that is the biggest problem for the culture difference. Initially, I was thinking that the only barrier is language. When we're talking the same language, probably it will be okay. But after learning more and more deep, the business growing, find that the culture mentality difference really is the key barrier for the business. And fortunately myself, been staying in UK more than 25, 26 years. And I always claim, although my English is still not good, but I'm thinking a lot of thinking or mentality already changed in the Western side. And but I can see the clash between the two different cultures is the main barrier for that. And particularly, if I straightforward to say, NVC was very lucky. We started in 2007, and in 2008, and the economic crisis, and I hate to say, but actually NVC take advantage of the economic crisis, because a lot of the lighting company, say, been run decades or half a century, and suddenly fallen. And those senior people, and in normal circumstances, you need to make an appointment with them. You need waiting for 2 or 3 weeks or even 1 month in order to meet with them. But suddenly, those people, they lost the job overnight. And at that time, we took advantage. We offered quite a lot of senior, high caliber people. And those people, they are working very hard, and they are very professional. But we find that the difference is the culture clash. that really. And also the other side is to working in a Chinese invested company probably is the not easy things. I'm afraid to say that. And those people, and I observed, or I realized that initially, in earlier stage, a lot of people say afraid to say it is a Chinese company. And NVC in China is the largest lighting company, and the brand value now is more than £2 billion of equivalent of value. But in UK, at that time, very little people know NVC. And I find that my managers say afraid to say they are working in a Chinese company, and when they try to sell products or that, and they try to avoid to say it is a Chinese company. And when we run more and more, I find that a lot of misunderstood or cannot communicate fully. It is due to the different culture or mentality. So that is the challenge.
Thank you. And Philip, I think you are a good example for culture hybrid. Can you tell us your experience working for Chinese bosses?
Is that better?
Yeah, off the recorder?
Yeah. I turned the mic off to deliberately dodge the question. Okay. Well, I can only comment from my own personal experience. I think that's the best approach. So, I find working with the Chinese companies, from my perspective, very good. For sure, there is a language barrier. And my Chinese is awful. I can say ni hao, xi xi. That's it. And the rest is English or nothing, unfortunately. So that's the first thing. However, I've worked in several countries, and I've always had the language barrier, even with the Americans. So I don't see a problem. I don't see a problem there. So that's the first thing. Secondly, in terms of that visionary culture, there is also an implied level of responsibility. So we have not had in the investments from Geely a flood of Chinese come over to run the business. In fact, it's local people being entrusted with the chairman's cash, the bank's cash, in order to deliver the investment, which is great in our circumstances. It may not be a great fit in other circumstances, but I personally think that is good, because having been entrusted with that level of opportunity, the pressure is about delivery. And one of the things culturally is the speed of which the expectation is very high. Everything is expected very, very quickly, and the return of information and the understanding it very, very quickly. And that is perhaps different to the UK culture, where we probably take a step back, understand, calculate the approach, and then commit to where we're going to. There is an implied pace injected into the level of expectation, and I think we have had to adjust to that. However, that said, we've had to change a lot of culture anyway as part of our investment, so I don't see that so much of an issue either. But one of the things that I learned very early in my career is that from a cultural perspective, the Chinese, and I may be wrong in saying this, but this is certainly my experience, the Chinese like personal relationships and personal contact, and phone calls and video conferencing do work and they are convenient, but I was always told if you're going to travel 4 times, travel 5 and make sure that you are being seen and going over there, making the effort to be in presence to explain the situation. And I do that, and I also go 4 or 5 times a year over to China, to Hangzhou, to Shanghai, Beijing, and I do make the effort to do that. And that alleviates some of the cultural concerns as well. So I see it only positively from that perspective.
Okay, thank you so much. And Rita, in Alipay, you are in charge of lots of market, Middle East, Europe, and share your experience. Just share.
Okay, yeah. So I think any company, including Chinese companies going global, would face cultural issues, as the biggest challenge, and we do the same because with Alibaba setting up offices in various places in Europe, we face that challenge every day, and our local hires, all these Westerners, I see their struggle every day, and because especially when it comes to a company like Alibaba, with very unique culture, very fast-paced, grassroots, classmate culture. We call our colleagues classmates, right? So and one of our core values is embrace change, and to some, like local hires, it's really, in the beginning it would feel like, a culture shock. But I think it all goes down to how committed the company is to bridge that culture. So we do that every day, and I think one thing Jack Ma said, I think is very visionary, that for Chinese to come out, the Chinese employees in the company need to understand the world, but the more important is how the world can understand China. So so that's why we launched a program called AGLA, so Alibaba Global Leadership program. So this is an ongoing program where we hire talents, we recruit talents from around the world and send them back to Hangzhou for like 3 months and rotate among different BUs of Alibaba, and understand and see for themselves the culture and mingle with the employees there, and to bridge that mutual understanding. So I think that's a very we are running that program. I think it's the second one now. We're seeing really all these talents from around the world will be the driving force of our internationalization in the future.
There is only 1 minute, but I have lots of very important questions for you. So I think my last question is if there is an industry or factory from your industry, from lighting industry, I think in here it's easy to regulate it. It's very easy. But I think today in China, lots of game changers like Alibaba, like Jingdong, like something like e-commerce in China. If this thing never happened in UK, but the company, they move their business very fast to this land, what will happen? Anyone want to answer the last question?
I think for lighting industry, people already realized that the e-commerce is growing so fast. It's started to affect everyone. And I should say, on the other hand, the UK is UK market or UK lighting industry is the most conservative area than other countries. And the wholesalers still play the largest role for the contractor or the construction companies. They are not only supply goods, but they also supply finance, because those construction company or the contractor or electrician, they cannot bring cash to buy lighting, particularly for certain size of the project. And therefore, our guess is we need to prepare and start slowly build up the e-commerce. But our judgment is next 5 or 6 years, the major player in lighting industry still will be the wholesaler.
So, Mr. Han, so ICBC want to a game changer here.
Game changer, yeah, but as the group, at the group level, I'm not the decision maker. I'm the executioner of our group strategies. But I think on the group level, we have, as I said, we remain committed to this market, and we wish to develop our London into a hub for ICBC on the global distribution network. So I think for example, the roles we might play in the development of ICBC, the group as an entire group, for example, I think we have developed a very good corporate governance structure in the ICBC London PLC as a local bank. So we can migrate that corporate governance to other areas on the, in ICBC's global platform in Europe, North America, South America, etc. I think it could be a sort of pioneering operation for ICBC's global operation.
Thank you very much. And I hope London become a hub for Chinese global changers and for Chinese entrepreneurs. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the CEIBS China Knowledge Podcast. Keep up with business in China by subscribing on iTunes U or through your favorite podcast app. China Europe International Business School has campuses and teaching facilities in China, in Shanghai, Beijing, and Shenzhen, as well as Africa in Accra, Ghana, and in Europe in Zurich, Switzerland. The CEIBS MBA program is ranked number 1 in Asia and 11th in the world by the Financial Times 2017 Global MBA ranking. CEIBS is the bridge that connects the world and China.